Season 2, Episode 6, The Arrival. Dinner is served. 3 scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor are on a plane heading to the famous dark matter conference. Dinner arrives, but Papaia is asleep. Banani, wake up Papaia, they're serving dinner. Papaia wakes up with a start. Papaia, shields up, we're under attack. Oh, wait, it's just the dinner cart. Sorry, I was dreaming. Attendant, sir, would you prefer meat or fish? Papaia, meat. No, fish. No, wait, meat. Can I get half and half? Attendant, I'm afraid not, sir. Papaia, all right then, let's go with fish. Igor, be careful not to make the wrong decision. You might regret it for the rest of your life. Attendant, and you, sir? Ravioli, definitely not fish. Don't you have lasagna? Attendant, the menu is quite limited, unfortunately. Igor, this is a plane, not an Italian restaurant. Ravioli, ugh. Fine, I'll take the meat. Igor, think like a businessman and seize this investment opportunity. Ravioli, what are you talking about? Igor, take the fish, hide it in your backpack for a month, and then sell it to the army as a biological weapon. Flying steaks. 3 scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor are on a plane heading to the famous dark matter conference. Dinner arrives. Banani, I'll have the meat, please. Attendant, here you go. Banani, excited, lifts the lid with great expectations. Banani, it's a steak. It must be juicy. Banani tucks a paper napkin into his collar like a bib. Banani, damn, this meat is as tough as a wall. Banani presses hard with his plastic knife, which snaps. Banani, oh no, the knife broke. The meat is too tough. Papaia, feel free to use mine. I don't need it. The fish is tender. Banani, let me try again. I'll go for a sharp, clean cut. Banani makes a second attempt to slice the steak, but instead of cutting, the meat catapults off the plate and lands perfectly onto the empty plate of a passenger across the aisle. Banani, oh no, did you see that, Ravioli? Ravioli, incredible. Your steak landed right in the neighbor's plate. Igor, congratulations, Banani. You've just invented the Olympic steak toss. If we had a somersault, we might sign you up for the games. The neighbor. 3 scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, are on a plane heading to the famous dark matter conference. Dinner arrives. Banani has served a steak so tough that in his attempt to cut it, it flies off his plate and lands perfectly in the plate of an unsuspecting passenger. Ravioli, how did you expect to cut that rock-solid steak with a plastic knife? Why didn't you do like me and just eat it with your hands? Igor, Ravioli doesn't waste time with pointless conventions. He lives by the motto, if you can't cut it, devour it. The neighbor still hasn't noticed the steak in his plate. Neighbor, miss, can I get a second serving? Oh, look at that. They already gave me another steak. I must say the service on this flight is surprisingly fast. The flight attendant walks past him with the cart. Neighbor, thank you so much. Attendant, you're welcome. The confused attendant turns to her colleague. Attendant, what did he thank me for? Colleague, no idea. Attendant, this flight feels like a madhouse. Igor, a madhouse? No, there are only 3 of them, but they make up for the entire plane. Look. The plan. 3 scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, are on a plane heading to the famous dark matter conference. Dinner arrives. Banani has served a steak so tough that, in his attempt to cut it, it flies off his plate and lands perfectly in the plate of an unsuspecting passenger. Banani is brainstorming with Ravioli to come up with a plan to retrieve the steak. Banani, okay, Ravioli, help me think. How do I get my steak back without looking like a lunatic? Ravioli, you could pretend it's part of the in-flight service. Like a steak warming service? Banani, no, I'd have to disguise myself as a flight attendant. Ravioli. Then stage an emergency. Say the steak is contaminated and must be recalled immediately. Banani. What? You want to start a panic? Ravioli. Oh, no thanks. The airport security check was already enough of a disaster for me. Banani. What if I'm just direct and honest? Excuse me, that steak is mine. It flew from my plate to yours. Ravioli. I don't know. Even if it's true, it doesn't sound very believable. Banani. You know what? Maybe we could create a diversion, like dropping something loud. Igor. Like an airplane? The diversion. 3 scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, are on a plane heading to the famous dark matter conference. Dinner arrives. Banani is served a steak so tough that, in his attempt to cut it, it flies off his plate and lands perfectly in the plate of an unsuspecting passenger. Banani and Ravioli are devising a plan to retrieve the steak. Banani spots an unattended tray on one of the overhead compartments. Banani, look over there. I'll knock that tray over. Ravioli, yeah, that should work. But what if the owner sees you? Banani, unlikely. There's no one there. The people sitting there all went to line up for the bathroom. Ravioli, all right, but you have to act fast. Banani, perfect. As soon as the passenger turns away, you switch the plates. Ravioli, I'm ready. You can count on me. Just so you know, with Ravioli, no one stays hungry. This is a cause very close to my heart, since childhood. Banani. Okay, enough talk. We have to be quick. Now I'll count to 3. Then I'll stand up and knock the tray over. And the moment the passenger turns away, you switch the plates. Igor. All right, now I'll count to 3 and then I'll go hide. This embarrassment, guys, is all yours. The head bump. 3 scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, are on a plane heading to the famous dark matter conference. Dinner arrives. Banani is served a steak so tough that, in his attempt to cut it, it flies off his plate and lands perfectly in the plate of an unsuspecting passenger. Banani has come up with a plan to retrieve the steak and is about to put it into action with Ravioli. Ravioli. I'm ready. Banani. 1, 2, 3. Banani jumps up suddenly, but in doing so, he smashes his head violently against the low overhead compartment, drawing the attention of everyone, including the passenger. Banani, ouch, what a hit. Flight attendant. Sir, are you all right? Do you need a doctor? Banani. No, it's nothing. Flight attendant. You should be more careful next time. Can you tell me why you stood up so suddenly? Banani. Listen, I need to tell you something. Do you see that steak on that passenger's plate? Banani points at the steak while Ravioli hides his face in shame. Banani. Well, that steak is mine. Flight attendant. Call a doctor. Igor. No, a psychiatrist. No, wait, they already tried that, but it was useless. The doctor. 3 scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, are on a plane heading to the famous dark matter conference. Dinner arrives. Banani is served a steak so tough that, in his attempt to cut it, it flies off his plate and lands perfectly in the plate of an unsuspecting passenger. While trying to secretly retrieve it, Banani ends up hitting his head loudly. The flight attendants, thinking Banani might have a head injury, rush to find a doctor on board. Intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is a doctor on board, please report to the cabin. I repeat, if there is a doctor among the passengers, please report to the cabin immediately. This is an emergency. Banani's neighbor, the one with the steak, immediately stands up and runs toward the cabin. Ravioli, this is the perfect moment. Ravioli quickly swaps the neighbor's plate, which holds Banani's steak, with his own empty one. Everyone is gathered around Banani. Neighbor, doctor, let me see, open your mouth. The neighbor, who turns out to be a doctor, examines Banani and asks him routine questions. Doctor, He's fine, but it's best to keep him under observation until the end of the flight. Banani, don't worry, I'm fine. It's nothing. I just want to eat a steak. Flight attendant. Unfortunately, we're out of steaks. We only have fish left. Doctor, oh, that's no problem. You can have mine. I got a second serving, but I haven't even touched it yet. The neighbor hands his plate to Banani. But when Banani looks, he finds it empty. Igor. This steak doesn't deserve to be eaten. First, it flies from one plate to another, then it vanishes into thin air. Rather than eating it, Banani should take it to Nazal to be studied as a UFO in... The snitch. 3 scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, are on a plane heading to the famous dark matter conference. Dinner arrives. Banani is served a steak so tough that, in his attempt to cut it, it flies off his plate and lands perfectly in the plate of an unsuspecting neighbor. Trying to retrieve it discreetly, Banani ends up hitting his head, drawing everyone's attention. The flight attendants call a doctor to check on him, but the doctor turns out to be the very same neighbor. To help Banani, the neighbor offers him the steak, thinking it was his. Neighbor, but what happened to the steak that was in here? A passenger decides to snitch. Snitching passenger. Hey, it was that guy, the fat one in the scientist's lab coat. He swapped the plates. Ravioli, what are you talking about? You're hallucinating. Doctor, you should check him too. Snitching passenger. Hallucinating, huh? Check his plate. Everyone looks at Ravioli's plate, but it's empty. Ravioli. See? It's empty. Snitching passenger. That's impossible. Intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. We are experiencing some turbulence. The matter is dropped and everyone returns to their seats. Banani. What did you do with my steak? I bet you couldn't resist and ate it. But Ravioli pulls the steak out of his lab coat pocket. Ravioli. Didn't I tell you? With Ravioli, no one goes hungry. Banani. Thanks, buddy. But how did you hide it without anyone noticing? Ravioli. Let's just say I have years of experience in this field. Igor. Today, Banani discovered a new side of Ravioli, the one who's a true friend to food. The first point. 3 scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, are on a plane heading to the famous dark matter conference. During the flight, Banani finds a very interesting book. We are on the plane, where Ravioli and Banani are discussing the book. Ravioli, are you still reading that book? Banani, yes, I'm going deeper into point 1. Ravioli, the one that says everything that begins to exist has a cause. Banani, yes, exactly. Ravioli, I think it speaks for itself. Banani, yes, but there are some details. For example, what do we mean by beginning to exist? Ravioli, seems obvious to me. Something that wasn't there before is there now, like a table or a chair. Banani, yes, but isn't a table or a chair just a collection of components that we assemble to get the final result? How can we say that the table and the chair begin to exist? Ravioli, bah, in the end, it's just wordplay. The table and the chair existed before too, just in the form of unassembled pieces. Banani, exactly, but in any case, the pieces need someone to assemble them. Ravioli, and that's our cause. Banani, exactly. That's why we say that everything that begins to exist needs a cause. Ravioli, like I said, I don't see any problems with this point. It's obvious. Igor, the thing I really don't understand, and that remains a mystery, is why we keep following Papaia at this point. Oh, wait. Never mind. It's simple. It's because he's always the one who pays. No surprises? 3 scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, are on a plane heading to the famous dark matter conference. but the flight is taking a bit too long. Finally, the plane lands. The captain announces over the speaker, "Welcome to Springfield, Australia." Papaya, wait a minute. Papaya pulls the conference flyer out of his pocket. Banani, hey Papaya, look here. It says Springfield, Illinois. Ravioli, oh no, I can't believe it. Papaya messed up again. Papaya, how is this possible? I studied the flyer for hours and hours. Banani, how did you mix up Illinois with Australia? That's a massive mistake. Ravioli, I can't believe this. We were just half an hour away from the conference. And now we're on the other side of the world. Igor, imagine a world where things pop out of nowhere for no reason and completely unpredictably. Are you sure that world doesn't exist? Maybe you've never traveled with Papaya. But now that I think about it, things could have been worse. With the mistakes of this brilliant astronomer, we could have ended up orbiting in space.